This is World Report. Good morning. I'm John Northcott.
I'll begin with a word in English, and the rest is in Italian.
An historic moment inside the Sistine Chapel this morning. In a break from tradition, Pope Leo XIV began his first Mass in English. The 69-year-old former cardinal is the first American-born pope. Megan Williams has more from Rome.
Grasping a tall golden cross, Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, moved past the Swiss guards standing at attention up the aisle of the Sistine Chapel, filled with men in white robes and red caps, the college of 133 cardinals who elected him the first American-born pope. Prevost had only been made cardinal by Francis in 2023, the same year he was tasked with overseeing the church's new bishops. Observers say he quickly stood out as a man of consensus, known as the least American of American cardinals. As he stepped onto the red-curtained balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square last night, his first key word was a single, clear call.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace. He thanked Francis for his courage and urged the church to remain open and inclusive, building bridges through dialogue. Then, switching from Italian, the lingua franca of the Vatican, he spoke not in English, but in Spanish, the language of Peru, where he had long served as a bishop.
A mi querida diócesis de Chiclayo en el Perú.
He thanked the Peruvian people and made no mention of the United States.
The fact that he took for his name Leo XIV is very significant. Pope Leo XIII was the Pope in the 19th century who was on the side of labor unions. He was on the side of the workers. Says Vatican observer Father Thomas Rees. Leo shares much with Francis, but his approach to hot-button issues, like welcoming 2S LGBTQ+ Catholics and tackling clergy sex abuse, remains unclear. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
After 4 days of grueling questioning, cross-examination continues this morning of EM, the woman who alleges she was sexually assaulted by 5 World Junior hockey players in June of 2018. As Katie Nicholson reports, long cross-examinations can present a challenge for the witness and a different one for the lawyers asking the questions.
No more silence! No more fear!
The crowd of supporters for EM has grown with each day of her cross-examination. Inside, so has the intense scrutiny on her previous accounts of what she says happened in a London hotel in June of 2018. 5 former World Junior hockey players are accused of sexually assaulting her. They have all pleaded not guilty, and they all have legal teams cross-examining her one after the other.
That in and of itself can take a toll on someone's stamina, so to speak.
Jacob Jessen is a criminal defense lawyer in Toronto who often prepares witnesses for cross-examination. He isn't involved in this case, but he's been following it, including some testy exchanges between EM and one of the accused's lawyers on Thursday.
You may think that you're, as a witness, scoring points with a snarky remark or pushing back against the lawyer. That can come across really poorly to a jury or a judge looking at it objectively from the side of the room.
Well, it's entirely possible for a witness to be worn down.
Christopher Sharon is a law professor at Western University. He says in cases with multiple lawyers, there's a chance the cross can become repetitive, go on for too long, or go too far.
I've seen it happen where a witness is cross-examined to such an extent that it can actually rebound against the cross-examiner or the cross-examiners as a group, in the sense that people start to feel sorry for the witness.
All optics the remaining 3 defense teams have to consider as cross-examination rolls into its 5th day. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, London, Ontario.
The owner of WestJet is selling 25% of the Calgary-based airline. The Canadian investment firm Onyx says a 15% stake will go to Delta Airlines. Another 10% will be sold to Korean Air. Both airlines have been WestJet partners for more than a decade. The deal is worth more than 750 million Canadian dollars. Claims and counterclaims continue between India and Pakistan over the escalating tensions in Kashmir. The crisis has led India to postpone its biggest domestic cricket tournament. This as the United States, it says it has no plans to get involved in the conflict. CBC's South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has the latest.
After another night of heavy explosions, blackouts and non-stop firing across the line of control, the de facto border in Kashmir, separating the Indian side from the Pakistan one, Saima Talib tries to pick up the pieces. Our home was destroyed by mortar shells, she says. The clothes we're wearing is all we have left. We had to run for safety and hide in the bushes, her neighbor Nasir Ahmed Khan says. Our lives mean nothing. There's been an exodus along the contested border as the conflict has rapidly spiraled. India and Pakistan are each blaming the other for ramping up attacks. New Delhi says Pakistani armed forces launched widespread drone attacks Thursday night along the entire western border, but that the strikes were repelled. Islamabad denies the claims. Pakistani police say at least 5 people were killed in heavy shelling that continued into morning. And fears of the tensions escalating further into an all-out war are deepening.
We can't control these countries, though. Fundamentally,
these comments from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance aren't helping.
What we can do is try to encourage these folks to de-escalate a little bit, but we're not going to get involved in the middle of a war that's fundamentally none of our business.
It's a shift away from the role of mediator the U.S. has played in the past to dial down tensions, a role that's sorely empty now, with the 2 nuclear powers locked in a military conflict that's already their most serious in decades. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Russia is celebrating the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany.
Здравствуйте, товарищи! Поздравляю вас!
The defense minister greets troops during a massive parade in Moscow's Red Square. Thousands of soldiers marched past invited international leaders who joined Vladimir Putin on the reviewing platform. As Briar Stewart reports, the Russian president is using the celebration of the past to send a message about the current conflict in Ukraine.
As the band played, thousands of soldiers and cadets marched in front of Red Square. Most were from Russia, but there were troops from 13 other countries, including China, whose leader, Xi Jinping, was sitting right beside Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia has been and will continue to be an indestructible wall against Nazism, Russophobia, and anti-Semitism, said Putin. We will fight against the atrocities committed by those who support these aggressive, destructive ideas. On display in the parade, Russian drones currently being used in Ukraine. Putin had declared a unilateral 3-day ceasefire to mark the anniversary, a move which Ukrainian officials saw as a manipulative stunt. They say the fighting hasn't stopped on the front line. Russian authorities warned that security would be stepped up during the parade and that there would be widespread internet and mobile outages to protect against any Ukrainian drones.
It used to be a conversation about loss and sacrifice.
Sam Green is a professor in Russian politics at King's College London and says Victory Day in Russia has gone through a transformation.
I mean, they have framed certainly the entirety of the conflict in Ukraine going back to 2014 in the language of World War II.
It's an effort, he says, to try to convince the Russian public that the country is fighting a just war, even as it refuses to agree to a 30-day proposed ceasefire. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
And finally, part of a Soviet-era spacecraft is falling back to Earth. Cosmos 482 has been stuck in orbit for more than half a century, and international space agencies say it could crash down tomorrow. But astrophysicist Jonathan McDowell says there's no reason to panic.
It will slow down as it plows through the atmosphere from 17,000 miles an hour to about 150 miles an hour. Got basically something the size of a small car plowing into the Earth at 150 miles an hour. It's not like a evacuate the city, right? But it's like a small plane crash or something like that, right? It's you don't want to be standing right underneath.
Cosmos 482 was launched in 1972 on a voyage to Venus, but it never made it. The rocket engines shut off too early and the probe remained stuck in Earth's orbit. Experts say the spacecraft could survive the journey back without burning up. It was built to survive the extreme heat and pressure of Venus's atmosphere. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Space news as well. If you're looking for the tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. That's cbckidsnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.